This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game, and we are going to continue our series on featuring InsurTechs. Today, I've got a local guy. I mean, I've never met Trace Meek, but he's literally right across the bridge from me, and I'm sure we've run, as I've already figured out, in many of the same circles over the course of our career. So it's good to meet you in person, man, or as much in person as COVID will allow.
Yeah, very nice to meet you, David.
So tell me what's going on, man. How give everybody sort of the 10,000 foot overview of who you are. And I mean, I know we're going to talk about Fetch, your product that you've got out there, but you know, we'll talk agency shop and things too. Just sort of give them the journey that you've been through.
Sure. So about 12 years ago, I stepped into my agency that is now over 65 years old. I'm the third generation owner, and about, let's see, 2009, I kind of stepped in, got my license, and just started helping out around my office. And when I came into my office, it was a full-on paper office. And we had a management system, I guess you would call it, but it was more like just a fancy Rolodex online on the computer. And so I was kind of taken back by it, like, is this how things are done around here? And after some research, I finally figured out that we needed to take the office paperless and really get a real management system and use it, because there would be stacks of people's files on their desk, 3-4 feet high, and they'd be shouting back at each other. Do you have the Carothers file or the Smith file? Oh, I think I filed that back. And then they filed it back in the wrong place. And I mean, we had client files that went back to like the 70s and 80s. So I told my father, who was running the agency at the time, that I was going to go paperless, and he kind of laughed at me. He's like, we have, 10, 15,000 files. There's no way we're going to do it. And I said, we're going to get it done in a year. Ended up taking 3 years, but it was a painful journey. But that was kind of my first real experience on seeing how our industry is so kind of in the dinosaur age when it comes to certain things, especially when you're in a multi-generation office where you have no... where you don't get to see a lot of the stuff that maybe coming in new, and you already have a preconceived idea of what it should be.
Absolutely. So it's funny, we had Steve Anderson and Carrie Wallace on the podcast yesterday to record about a new product that they have going into the marketplace, and he was telling us in the interview that he took his first he created his first paperless agency. I want to say it was in like 1993 or 1994.
Wow.
And my first question is, what did the file sizes on those scanned files look like back then? I can't even imagine, because, I mean, scanning technology was nowhere near what it is today. I mean, now you can get a Fujitsu scanner that you stick on your desk that'll do like crazy amounts per minute in terms of scanning both sides, and it'll give you the ability to compress with the click of a mouse and all of that. So it's certainly come a long way. I don't necessarily envy you walking into that situation and having to fix it. But, I mean, if you're looking at it from the perspective of cleaning up data and everything else, probably touching every file and validating that it even needed to exist is a good place to start.
Yeah, we found a lot of old files that didn't need to be around, that's for sure. So, and talking about the people you were interviewing at the last podcast, I wonder if they were doing like a microfiche type system,
Yeah, dude,
microfiche.
yeah.
Remember that back in the day as
Oh
kids?
yeah, I didn't even think about that. It's very possible though. I mean, that I was just barely out of high school when he was doing that. And I know, like when I graduated high school in 1991, the internet was not even a thing really.
No.
It developed a little bit over the time I was in college my freshman year, but there wasn't any hardcore internet like there is today. That's for sure. And it was all dial up. And if you had call waiting and you didn't disable your call waiting and somebody dialed your number and the call waiting kicked in, then it would boot them off and, just one thing after the other. But so you've had the agency. What's going on with the agency today? Are you actively involved in that? Your day to day running the agency at this point?
Most definitely. Most definitely. Yeah, I purchased it from my family about 3 years ago, and I'm so the 100% owner of the agency, and we're just moving forward. And I try to take as much as I can from automation to technology and really work it. And about 3, 4 years ago, my mission has always been, because down here in Florida with all our hurricanes, that I wanted to have that ability where if my team needs to disperse across the country because we have a hurricane coming, that everyone could set up their computers and be able to do everything they need to do from their laptop. And so in that process, I was already had that all done. Everything's cloud, everything runs through the computer, even their phone is in the computer as a soft phone. I never thought it was going to happen during a pandemic. Well, I never thought about a pandemic. But because of that, literally this time last year, I sent everyone home with their laptops and they haven't been back since. So,
Yeah,
and
we're exactly the same, man. I'm relatively forward thinking in technology. I wish I could tell you that I was prophetic in why I was doing it, but truthfully, down here, I think you need to plan ahead, especially with hurricane season and everything else, because if there is an industry that you need to be available if a hurricane hits, it's ours. Aside from first responders, and so. Um, we didn't skip a beat, man. When COVID hit, it was literally just we flicked a switch and everybody left. In truth, I've got an office here in Brandon, Valrico area, and then my other office is up in Lando Lakes, Lutz area, right off of 54 in the Sun Coast. And I've been to that office one time since COVID hit,
yeah,
and we don't have any need at this point. I've got it. My producers typically will go to that office because they all live closer to that area, and it's set up more like a landing strip than anything else, with docking stations and dual monitors if they need it. But I don't think that we'll ever get back. This is the new normal for us. Everybody likes working remotely. I have zero complaints about productivity, and we've continued to put new business on the books like crazy. So
and I
why
think it
change
helps
it?
productivity in the sense that there's no travel time. People don't feel like they have to maybe get dressed up or, have to come to the office. So,
Yeah, agreed.
and for sure, for sure. So, sorry, I lost
So
my train
talk
of
a
thought.
little bit. So we're in a unique market, and I've to be completely transparent. I've not seen Fetch at
Yep.
all, so I'm interested in sort of what led you to that idea, and maybe talk a little bit about what the thought process is, what it does, and who an ideal user would be for you.
So, about 2.5 years ago, I stepped on a pipe on the ground and I rolled my left foot and broke my fifth metatarsal.
Oh,
And I was actually preparing for a swim meet and the next day, and I sit down after I roll my foot on the pipe, and I'm with a buddy of mine who happens to be a surgeon, and he looks at it and he pushes on it and it hurt extremely bad, and he goes, "Yeah, you're not going to be able to walk on that." And I said, "Well, can I swim tomorrow in my meet?" And he goes, "Trace, you're not going to really be able to walk on it for a couple months." So I was pretty down about that. And so I'm laying on the couch. I got my foot up. I'm icing it down. And I turned to the wife and I said, "Honey, can you get me a beer?" She goes, "It's 9 a.m." I said, "I know, but what am I going to do with my time laying here all the time? I want something to do." And she goes, "Well, is there anything you've been really like wanting to do? And now that you have this downtime, you can do it." I said, "I have this issue in my office in personal lines, mainly personal lines. And that is when it comes to underwriting risks, there isn't really a way, um, a great way for agents to be able to look up data. So you'll get that shout across the office, who will write a pit bull? And then they'll go, oh, so-and-so carrier. And then they go, but, oh, it's got PEX plumbing, so that won't work. Well, and the roof is 16 years old. And there has to be a better way to do this. And all I could really find is that people print out their guidelines and put it in a 3-ring binder, or they try to build their own Excel spreadsheet. And the problem with Excel spreadsheets are, and unless you're really technically advanced, is making it to really easy filter down, right? So there's not a way to search multiple things. So I called up a buddy of mine who's built a bunch of websites for me, and he ended up becoming my CTO on this project. And I said, hey, can we build a system that takes these filters or these pieces of data and make it easy to search? And he says, we sure can. And so this was about, let's see.
He didn't tell you how much.
No, yeah. So it was in March, and we had June to launch it for the FAIA convention, which is our big state convention, as you know, in Florida. And I said, I want this ready to go in June. And I mean, we worked night and day getting the data, building the system, and I was like, this thing is just going to fly off the shelves. Well, we're now into our second year. We have over 1,000 users.
Wow. Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. And the amount of scenarios that our system can search is, people don't even believe it, but if you take how many possible scenarios you can get from our system, it's like in the trillions that you could possibly make.
I couldn't even begin to think about how to program that. I mean, the idea itself, I might be able to come up with maybe on a good day, but to think about how to turn that into actual meat and potatoes that somebody can see on a screen is phenomenal. So are you in all 50 states with the product at this point?
So right now we're just in Florida.
Okay, that's what I wondered. And I mean, I think for edification purposes, for the people that listen to this, they're all over the country. If you're going to pull this off anywhere, I got to believe Florida's the hardest place to do it. So for you to grow, I can't imagine it would be a horrible experience if you're going to take this, national. You've been in the game a lot longer than I have, especially with regard to, personal lines. I don't do a ton of personal lines in my agency. I just feel like we have so many carriers that are almost all the same except for one little tweak, right? Like all these
Correct.
Demotech A-rated carriers are basically, to me, they feel, and I'm, self-admittedly uneducated as far as the personal lines end of things. They all touch and feel the same, except for one little thing here, one little thing there. This person will take a certain breed of dog, whereas the other one won't, or whatever else. And it sounds like you figured out a way to just basically make all that go away.
So pretty much in our system, you pick home and you put the address in, it'll populate it, and then it'll give you the filters. You check off those couple filters. It actually will pull the property data information, screenshot of the house, and show you exactly the carriers that'll write it. And it's literally takes 30 seconds to do. So we took something that can take someone 15 minutes to maybe an hour a day and combined it into just a 30-second search.
That's solid.
And yes, we are going nationwide, which is part of the reason I, reached out to you and was hoping to be a part of your podcast. So thank you so much. Is that we need just the underwriting guidelines. So if somebody sends us the underwriting guidelines, we can add it in the system. And we've had people in New York, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Texas, and Connecticut reach out to me, and they're starting to send that data over, and we're now updating the system as we go.
That's awesome. So from a user interface standpoint, the agents that are using your product right now, what's the ones who are the most successful with it? What are they doing? Like how, and here's where I'm going with that. I know that sounds sort of an abstract question. In my mind, I'm thinking if I could have a fillable form on my website that I gather the information that's variable on any homeowner's policy that I could potentially quote, and I could have that form information dump into my CRM and then somehow push it out to your software product, it would narrow down and I don't have to worry about having a personal lines rater for home because now I know the exact best carrier from a coverage standpoint, which is what we're always going to recommend, and I can just go in there and quote it.
So you're asking if it connects to a rater?
I'm just wondering how I'm wondering how if I'm a brand new agent, which I'm sure that a lot of people listening to this aren't using your product because the majority of the people who listen to us are not even in Florida. if they were to get started with this, is this, and I also understand the cynical nature of my peer group of not wanting to have to put data into multiple places. So what's the how do you streamline what you're doing from a data intake to putting it through your system to ultimately getting it into a quoting engine?
Right. And the thing about our system is all you have to do is populate the address, put the address in, and it's got the form fill. Like, we try to make
Nice.
it as simple as possible. Like, I still don't know how the carriers still make you tab into each form and put in the city, state, and zip when Google has a perfectly good product to make it populate. So we do that. It pulls the data, and then you just click the 3 or 4 filters, which just takes a couple seconds. And then boom, there's the information of the carriers that would possibly write the risk. So we want to minimize the amount of data you have to put in. So it really doesn't take it. It's more of a complementary piece, kind of, to the
Yeah,
rater.
that actually makes way more sense. I thought you were having to put, answer a reasonable number of questions to be able to know, like, what kind of dog does this person have? Do they have a trampoline or not? Is there a diving board or those are all things that most people won't write anyhow. So that pretty much excludes everybody. But that's where my head was. So it's interesting to know that you can pull the data points just based on the address and just have a couple of filters checked and boom, you've got results.
Yeah, and as an agency owner and dealing with producers and understanding this process, being as simple as possible was really important. We took a very complicated system and made it simple on the
Yeah, it
front end
sounds
for the
like it.
user. It's complicated on the back end, easy for the user on the front end. So especially in Florida right now, if the carrier is willing to write it, it's probably one you should quote it with, and it's probably not.
Right.
It's going to be a few. The more filters you choose, the less likely the carrier is going to write it.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, anybody who reaches out complaining about the fact they've had a 20 or 30% increase on their homeowners this year, I tell them they can't sign the bind order on that fast enough. Just get
Yeah,
it. Don't even bother
just
shopping
pay
it
it.
around.
Pay it.
Pay it and call it a day, man. It's absolutely nuts here right now. So, from the carrier side of things, I'm assuming this isn't anything where you're needing to have access to their system for anything. So you didn't have to go get any kind of permission or anything to program their appetite into the back end of your site. So you could really deal with anybody as long as you knew what their appetite was, correct?
And most of this stuff is public knowledge on the OIR
Right.
website. I mean, you can go pull it and find it. It's just finding the carriers that the agents want in the system, right? Because there can be a ton of underwriting guidelines for carriers that aren't even probably writing right now. So that's why the underwriting guidelines help get us kind of a base to get going and to figure it out. And the funny part is, I've called on carriers that I'm not even appointed with and asked them underwriting questions, and they answer them for me over the phone. So
How many carriers do we even have in Florida that are writing right now? I mean, it seems like half of them have already pulled out.
and people say they pulled out. They've just really tightened their requirements. So they want 2010 or newer homes. They want 10-year-old roofs or less. They want really good risks. So they haven't completely really pulled out of the state. I haven't seen yet, but they are starting to change their guidelines for sure. We've made
What?
86 updates in the past 30 days in Fetch.
Oh, wow. So what's the feedback you're hearing from your users?
The time savings, I'd have to say, is the biggest, and the frustration of keeping up with the guidelines and trying to update their own Excel spreadsheets. I had a lady call that did a search, and one of the carriers said that they would write the home with a trampoline. And she said she talked to her underwriter, and the underwriter said, no, they won't write trampolines. And I said, well, let me check. So I checked with the head, with my rep. I checked the guidelines. I checked the manuals. I did everything. And they all said, yes, they'll write a trampoline. So I got in this kind of interesting discussion with her. And we came to the conclusion, she asked the question to the underwriter, do you insure a trampoline? And that wasn't what the underwriter knew. The underwriter knew, yeah, we'll insure the house. We just won't insure the liability of the trampoline, but we'll write the risk. So it's very confusing when you do this back and forth and you got, 100 underwriters and they're all kind of not listening to the questions. So that's what makes our system just so much simpler, is that we do a lot of the research for you and make sure that the answer is correct when you go to use the system. And if it's not, we go and try to hunt it down and make sure why.
Interesting. So you've got 1,000 users. How many more users do you have the opportunity to pick up in Florida? And when are you looking to? What's your next state?
Well, there's according to the website of licenses that have 220s or 220s and 440s, I think there's over 200,000 agents in this that have a Florida license.
Hmm.
Um, I love to pick up as many as I possibly can and have this be a service for them that really helps them out. We would like to move more into the coastal states because we're finding that those also have difficult underwriting criteria. I know sometimes out in the Midwest and stuff, there's only maybe a handful of carriers that an agent has, and they're pretty much spot on, and they never really changed underwriting guidelines, is our experience. So
And their
we're looking.
premiums are insanely low. I don't even know how my friends in Ohio make a living.
I agree. I agree. So, yeah, and we've gotten a pay raise this year in Florida for sure with the increases, but it also gets the heck.
Alabama's gotten really rough too. My friend Bradley Flowers is there
Mhm.
in the Mobile area, and they're just getting crushed with what they're doing. I mean, it may even be tougher in that part of the country than it is in Florida.
Yeah, and again, if they're listening out there, go to my website, check it out, send me an email, send me your guidelines. I love to put them in and get it going in your state for sure. Oh, and it's pretty inexpensive, Dave. It's $47 a month for the first user and $10
Good
for each
grief.
additional user.
Man, that's extremely economical. I don't know who wouldn't get their money back on that investment every month, knowing what it takes to go through and rate something. We use Quote Rush for our rater, and
Hmm.
it's reasonably quick. But good grief, man, if we could eliminate the need to go in and deal with all of that nonsense and narrow it down and just go to one carrier to key this stuff in, I think that it changes the game. Because the one thing I've noticed about these different raters too is it's still double data entry. I mean, you put it into the rater and you got to go back in and clean it up anyhow. So I'd rather have the efficiency of touching stuff once or as little as possible instead of, taking it from one to the other. So I mean, I'm not necessarily advocating that you're replacing what a rater does, but you're helping people make intelligent decisions without having to go through that whole rater process. And even then, when you go into a rater and you get information back, it doesn't necessarily mean that the company is going to write the risk, depending on what the parameters are that are in there. So you could go through that whole process for absolutely no reason.
Well, and that's the difference between a rater and us. A rater's just rating it. We're underwriting the risk for you. And underwriting, a an electrical panel isn't a rating factor when it comes to coming
Yep.
up with a premium. So you can have these great premiums over here in the rater, but those carriers might not write your risk. So we're really hoping that you do this first, and if it gives you those 3 or 4 carriers, that then you just check those carriers off to quote, and it helps some of the systems, kind of like Quote Rush, quote faster. So you're not quoting 25 carriers knowing that 15 of them aren't going to matter.
Right. Well, it also helps your hit ratios too with the carriers. They have to appreciate that because you're not submitting business that there was never a chance they were going to write. I mean, I want my close ratio to be as high as it possibly can. So I only want to go to the places that have a realistic shot.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
So that's interesting, man. I mean, I think that I definitely see the need for it and am really intrigued. I mean, sign me up. I mean, seriously, I need to have you get in touch with Raphael so that we can get this put in place immediately over here. The one thing I know about Florida right now is literally everybody's shopping. It doesn't matter who it is. These people are getting their renewals. And, I joke about it and say, if your renewal is 20, 30%, just sign it and get on with it. But people are shopping, man. And, when that happens, you do uncover things that they didn't realize were in existence, like missing coverage or, any number of factors that we could run into. So, having the ability to streamline the process and have you intelligently interact with the carriers that are the best fit for the risk makes all the sense in the world.
And as we update the guidelines in our system, we've built a library of guidelines. So you actually go in and you appoint the carriers you're appointed with, and then your digital guideline library, so it becomes your digital 3-ring binder, is now sits all in one nice little location that you can access from your phone, from your computer, and you can pull up that information in that guideline. Don't print them. I, the environment with the changes of these carriers, and we're printing pages every day. I think we found out that if we took the 1,000 users we have over just the past 6 months, if they had printed every guideline that they were appointed with, it would be 90 feet tall in paper, in reams of paper. And so it's just what a waste of money and not needing to do it. Again, back to being paperless.
Yeah, it's interesting because how old are you?
I'm 41.
Okay, so you're younger than I am by a little bit, but I was talking to Cass about this earlier today, and you know, we need to adopt technologies and things like this. We're in a dinosaur industry. We talk about the old guard, and one of the things we talked about was the fact that the insurance industry, by and large, is male, pale, and stale, and we're not getting, feedback from different demographics or even different age bands. And one of the things that I've been able to do in my agency that's helped me a ton is bring in college interns every summer and have them come in, and literally I learn as much from the college interns as I could ever teach them. I'm going to show them how to market and build a business and all of the things that we have them do, and we have them go through and do real projects that we put into place. But it's the other conversations about how would you do this, how would you do that, and I don't think that the insurance industry by and large has enough of those conversations. And even if they do, people are asking the question to check the box. They're not actively listening to what this person's, advice is. And I think that, if we're not willing to adapt and look at changing the way we do things, we're eventually just going to be rendered extinct, to be quite honest.
I have my big kind of push or what really changed my mind about the going paperless was the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I read that book and I embraced it. I still have the original one, which got wet. It's beat up, and I still go back to that, and I still learn new things. And I think you have to start to embrace and listen to what other people are saying, even if they sounded crazy. And those were some crazy ideas back then when he wrote that book.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to read it. Honestly, I haven't. I've heard plenty of people who have, and I mean, I went through. It's funny. Probably like a month ago, I went through this big deal where I needed to figure out, okay, what am I going to read the rest of the year? Because we had Daniel Song come on the podcast, and he talked about reading for 10 minutes a day. And if you do that, you can finish basically a book a month, or 10 pages a day, maybe. You're finishing at least a book a month that way. So I went on to Amazon, and I've got like 24 books sitting on my desk at the house right now. But I've done good about getting through them, and that's one that I definitely need to add. It's interesting. I just wrapped up They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan, which I should have read that when it came out, but sometimes I get lucky, man. I was amazed at how much of the stuff he talks about in that book that we just sort of stumbled into and we're already doing in the agency. It was pretty comforting to know that's the case. But what else are you reading? I mean, besides 4-Hour Workweek, that's a great recommendation, and I'm going to write it down right now so I don't forget.
The other book that really has moved me as an entrepreneur and just somebody it's an older book, Sam Walton, Made in America. I carry that book with me everywhere because I learned so much. It doesn't matter what time of the world you're in. It's how you're being innovative and how you're doing things. I mean, Sam Walton would go knock on the door of his competitors and ask them questions, about their Ben Franklin stores or their 5 and dime stores, and they would give them information. People want to share. You just have to be wanting to ask. And I think that was one of the things. And when Sam Walton opened up one of his first Walmarts, he decided to put all these watermelons by the street, and he was going to have horse rides for the kids. Well, it ended up being a huge, hot, miserable day, and the watermelons were exploding. And the horses had diarrhea, and it was all running down the street. So as we go in our lives as insurance agents or entrepreneurs and everything we do, and we think no one has it this bad, people have gone through a lot of stuff to get to where they are today. So that always helps me keep motivated, for sure. That's why I don't have horse rides or watermelons out front.
I don't blame you. And you're right. I mean, I think sometimes we get caught up so much in our own struggles, we don't realize how good we have it. I was joking because I don't have air conditioning in the office today. That's the least of my concerns. I could have probably easily called out and gone home, and I don't consider myself an American hero because I sat and worked in the heat. But, You think about stuff like that. Think about how many times people run into things, and I'm sure you ran into it as you were building your product, that you hit a roadblock, you hit a snag, and you can't really do what you need to do when you need to do it, and you want to pull your hair out, you get frustrated, but you just suck it up and you push through, realizing that there's something on the other end of that. And a part of that's having the vision of what you believe in and visualizing that success. Just because you visualize success doesn't mean you visualize the entire roadmap to get there.
No.
As long as you can keep your eye on the end game, and you believe in that, and you believe that that's what your destiny is and where you should go wholeheartedly, all the other stuff is just temporary, in my opinion. And I mean, it's so different than starting an agency from scratch. Now, I'll be honest with you, man. I would rather start an agency from scratch than walk into a 65-year-old agency with minimal technology and immediately, files that are decades old and all of that, and I didn't figure it all out. I've got my own set of issues that I have to deal with every day, but thank God that I wasn't having to go in and clean up legacy stuff while I'm trying to make forward progress, because that's going to be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I went to go cancel a contract that we had with a vendor, and no one could find the file here. And I called the vendor. The vendor's like, that contract was signed in 1999. No one has, like, that's what happens if you don't start, digitizing and archiving everything you have. Eventually, no one knows where anything is.
I'm with you. Well, listen, I want to be respectful of your time. I'm happy to give you the floor. Tell them anything that you want them to know about Fetch Underwriting that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, so Fetch, it's a simple product built to help agents really underwrite the risks, right? So you choose the home, you put the address in, it pulls the property data from the property appraisers, shows you the carriers, and then gives you about 14 or 15 filters that you can choose from. The ones that we feel that 9 out of 10 times are the ones you're looking for. And then once you choose that, it'll show you the carrier. So let's say you get 3 or 4 carriers. We have profile buttons for each one. So you can actually click and go right into their website to log in. You can get the guidelines directly from that profile. We also have the phone numbers for underwriting. So it's kind of an all-in-one Rolodex 3-ring binder right there on your computer that you can access anywhere. So with the world changing the way they are, this is a great way to keep up with the information.
So for them to get a demo or to see it, I'm assuming that you have a recorded demo or something on the website, or is it a deal where they need to sign up and they'll do it live?
Yeah, it's really, it's like a 5-minute demo that I would do. And I usually like to do them because I like to help them kind of answer their questions personally. And they can go to the website fetchuw.com, FETCHUW.com. They can sign up for a 7-day trial, try it out, and then there's some stuff all about it on the main website. And we just updated to our 5.0, so we're working on getting the demo video up. So
solid. And what's the website?
FetchUW.com.
FetchUW.com.
Yeah, FetchUW.
FetchUW.com, people. You heard it from the man himself. It sounds like you could probably afford to hire 3 more people by all the time you're going to save, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
All the redundancy and everything taken out. And by the way, for everybody out there who would love to have a product like this at their disposal, make sure you're reaching out to Trace and letting him know where you're at. Send him some carrier guidelines and let him start building out other states. This is something that should not be contained to the state of Florida. So for you coastal people in the Carolinas and Georgia and in all the Gulf Coast and Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, no excuses. You're going to have everybody shopping just like we are. Help this man get this thing populated so he can help you.
The other thing too, Dave, is, sorry, I'm pulling it up now. The underwriting information is pulled from the guidelines, and the guidelines are stored in here so that all that is for everyone to see. The difference is between this and the rater, though, is that the rater doesn't necessarily rate all policy types, like DP1, DP3s, HO6s correctly. So this is a way to be able to see all your guidelines and all your policy types searched at the same time.
Man, that's awesome. I don't even want to contemplate the investment that you've made, but it is an investment and not an expense because you're going to get a return on this and you're helping a lot of people in the process. I appreciate you coming on, man. I look forward to
Thank
getting
you.
this out to everybody, and I will do everything I can to help you be successful. And that includes me reaching out to my personal lines guy the second I get off of this and having him go to your website and sign up. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day-to-day to come on. And unless you got anything else, man, let's wrap it.
That's it. Have a great day. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
Talk to you later.
So there's always a first time for everything, and we had finished recording, and then I started talking to Trace, and he's got this other awesome site that literally everybody should know. So I wanted to make sure that I got this out to you guys while I still had him on the line. So talk a little bit about your other site quick, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. I built a site called insurancedailynews.com, and the reason I built it was I just feel like every time I'm looking for insurance information, it's very complicated between all the magazines and blogs and information that Google or Bing can't really find it when I'm looking for it because it's not really looking for actual news of insurance. So what I did is I aggregated all the data in one place and created insurancedailynews.com. Has about 20 to 25 periodicals. So it's got Insurance Business Magazine, it's got IA Magazine, it's got InsurTech News, Insurance News Magazine, Insurance Journal, and National Underwriter, Property Casualty 360, Rough Notes. So I can go on and on and on. And then I was like, I see a lot on Facebook, people asking, who has a great insurance podcast? So now I added podcast on there. So there's like an additional 20 podcasts. So this thing is checking every, I believe, 15 minutes for new podcasts and new articles, spits it in there. You sign up. It'll give you the top 10 articles every morning that people are reading. So check it out. And then once a week, it'll tell you the top 10 read for the week. And I built this just to make it easy for agents to have one location. We even have a special COVID page that shows all the COVID information about insurance and all the stats. And it's searchable, so you can type in a word of something you're looking for. Like, let's say you're looking for health insurance, and it'll search the articles for everything. We've had millions of hits on it, and we have tons of searches. So you check it out.
Man, that is solid, and that it will be the very next place that I go after I have Raphael call you or go to your website and visit fetchuw.com. Thanks for sharing that, man. Thanks for putting that together. I mean, I can't imagine that was something that was necessarily easy, but to provide a resource like that for our peer group, that's solid and much appreciated.
We have 52,000 articles in there and 2,200 podcasts so far, and we've had 1.8 million clicks this year. So we are cranking with it. So enjoy it, use it. It's free. I just wanted a place for my agents and my agent friends to be able to read these articles and be the most up to date on what's going on in the industry.
That's awesome, man. That is great. Thanks so much for sharing.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Dave.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.